Welcome to the Burn Your Mortgage Podcast, a Canadian real estate podcast that shows you how to pay off your mortgage sooner and live well while doing it. Now, here's your host, Sean Cooper.
Welcome to the Burn Your Mortgage Podcast. I'm Sean Cooper, and it's great to be back for another episode. On today's show, I'll be talking to a returning guest, Lesley-Anne Scorgie of Oprah fame. Lesley-Anne, or LA for short, is an author, speaker, personal finance consultant, and founder of MeVest.ca. She's been a guest on Oprah and is a past winner of Avenue's Top 40 Under 40 and was also featured in a Top 100 Most Powerful Women in Canada in the Future Leaders category by Women's Executive Network. She has shared her secrets to achieve financial success with CBC, Breakfast Television, the Globe and Mail, and more. She's the lead money columnist at the Toronto Star. Her latest book is The Modern Couple's Money Guide, 7 Smart Steps to Building Wealth Together. She's also the author of Well Heeled, The Smart Girl's Guide to Getting Rich, and Rich by 30, Your Guide to Financial Success. In my interview with Lesley-Anne, we discuss what LA is writing about right now, considerations of upsizing houses, what are people doing with their careers to afford houses, and what are the money hacks to own a home sooner. Without further ado, here's my interview with Lesley-Anne Scorgie. Hi, LA. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Nice to be back and chatting with you about all things money.
Yeah, it's always great to have a returning guest onto the podcast here, especially an Oprah alumni. I'm not speaking with somebody who has appeared on Oprah every single day, so it's great to have you back on the podcast again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So yes, it's been a while since we spoke, so if you could just provide the listeners with a bit of a life update, what you've been up to these days, because yes, I believe when we first spoke, I don't think you even had kids back then, perhaps.
It's so interesting, Sean, because my life has shifted so much since we spoke last. I have 2 very, very hilarious and sweet kids. I've got a 3 and a 5-year-old now, and I feel like everything in my life has shifted, including even my focus on my career, because I'm a mom now, because I'm very much focused on my own family. My business has shifted to be very family financial wellness oriented as well. So it kind of fits really nicely. And so I'd say that, those 2 things are a big shift, and also starting in on a new book project, which is going to be also focused on family financial wellness, and I'm excited about that. So lots on the go, but my family and my career take up so much of my time. I don't have, I get in the occasional Pilates class, but not that much.
Wow, that's amazing. And sorry, I've lost track. Which book number are you at right now?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've
Are you
written
at book
4.
number 10 yet?
I've written 4, so this will be 5. And very early stages. We're quite literally in my office right now, mapping it out. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I use Post-its, old school Post-its, to help organize some of my thoughts on one of my walls in my office. And I have found that to be very handy in just putting the ideas on the Post-it, and then I put the Post-it underneath the chapter that it would fit best with in my office on my wall. And I wrote all my books using that method, come up with the outline, and then start to really just allow the thoughts to happen and create some organization around it. So it's a little bit easier these days because I can digitize a lot of it, but that good old-fashioned Post-it system is still working for me. So I'm still doing that.
Yeah, same with me. I'm a bit old school myself. I still write the grocery list on a piece of paper. I'm just not the biggest fan of technology. Sometimes easier to have it right in front of your face rather than just on a phone app or computer or something like that. So I totally hear you. So yeah, well, thanks for letting us into a bit of your book writing creativity there. And I'll be sure to check out your new book, and I'm excited to read that there.
Thanks.
Great. Well, so yeah, speaking of the topic of writing there, you don't have to spill the beans on like your new book, but we're talking about like your other writing, like you have your column there in the Toronto Star. So yeah, if you could tell us about what you've been writing about lately over the last few weeks and what have been interesting topics that you think would be relevant to our listeners here.
Well, I think it's best for me to focus on the two things that have really gone viral with my Toronto Star column. I write every single week. I have for years, and I focus on what is trending in personal finance. And I've had a lot of fun and a lot of interesting viral stories this year. One of them is around the loud budgeting phenomenon. And that is like, I'll break it down super quick, but basically, the way we're budgeting these days is a little different. We are being a lot more social and vocal about our budgeting process. So, as an example, and I think I have the loudest community of loud budgeters in North America. In my community, it's very much about sharing out loud what is going to fit your budget and what is not going to fit your budget. And this theme, this trend of loud budgeting is just that, where people are creating a budget. So, yes, you would have to have a budget to follow this trend. They're creating a budget, and then rather than following it in isolation, which can be a little lonely sometimes, they're really incorporating their budget into their social dynamics. So, if they're being invited to go for dinner and let's say it does not fit their budget, they're saying it quite openly and honestly, like, you know what, that doesn't work for my financial priorities right now, but coffee does. And going to the park and let's pack a picnic instead, that's what fits. And there's just so much more openness and conversation in the budgeting process. So instead of hiding behind a budget very secretively, which I mean, that was my generation. Nobody talked openly about their own personal priorities. Now it's very socially acceptable to be open and clear. And that whole trend of loud budgeting is everywhere right now. So, like, TikTokers are racking up millions of views talking about their budgets, and they're doing the loud budgeting trend. And you're also seeing this in Reddit threads. So that's one area that's extremely popular. And I wrote a follow-up column shortly after that one went viral, and it was like the $1 rule, where it's okay to spend on something where if your cost per use is less than $1, then it totally fits the budget. And that was a really popular concept because it's like pro spending, but only if you do the math, and pro budgeting, which means you have to think about, what is your priority and what isn't. So I think what I like about some of that trend, and I'll talk about another one in just a second, but what I love about this trend of loud budgeting and this trend of like being okay to spend if it actually does fit the math for your budget, that's a very uplifting narrative. It's a lot more fun, it's lighthearted, and it allows people to not feel shame around their budget and not feel shame around their spending, but instead just be kind of willing, able to embrace it. So, yeah, that's a loud budgeting trend. And then the other piece that I've been touching on quite a bit lately, it's a topic called soft saving. And Sean, you probably have seen this with your own students and clients and whatnot. I certainly see it with mine, but it's this almost like this tension of like, are we saving enough and still being able to live our lives? And you're seeing, I think, younger generations more and more look at the balance of enjoying their life a lot more now, and they're softening their savings regime and not doing quite as much saving in an effort to be able to afford to travel, to be able to afford to, clients recently, they went ahead and invested in like a redo of their backyard because that was going to improve their lives dramatically. And it versus topping up their TFSAs. And I thought, this is really interesting. This generation, this younger generation, let's say like the 30, 40 somethings, are, I think, a bit more balanced around their savings goals. And the one thing I'll just flag though is because you've known me for a long time, Sean, it's a balance, right? We want to enjoy our life for sure, but we also don't want to compromise on eventually being ready for retirement, or, if you did have a goal of buying a home, being able to actually do that someday, which does require a savings regime that you can stick to. It's just the soft savings trend is very much about like lightening the load on the savings, like take a chill pill on the savings regime. Don't stop it, but maybe reduce it so that you can have a better balance in your life. So those are a couple things that I've been writing about, and some of those stories have been extremely popular over the past few months.
Yes, some of your articles have definitely gone viral, that's for sure. And it's great to hear that social media is being used for good when it comes to personal finances, because there's that whole FOMO trend where it seems like everyone's just posting great things that they're doing on social media, like trips and restaurants and all that. But yeah, it's great that it's now being used for positive things like budgeting and saving money instead of just making everyone's lives seem like they're amazing and everyone has unlimited money there. But you may see the good, but you don't see the bad and the ugly parts. That's great to hear. And yeah, definitely finding that balance in terms of savings is important there. I mean, I'm a fan of basically setting your savings goal and then having that money automatically go into a savings account each month, and then really whatever money you have left over, you can spend it however you like and invest it in and spend it on travel or home renovations, whatever your priorities there are there. But yes, it's definitely important to find balance, because if you're spending so much money that you have to stop saving entirely, then it's probably a good idea to reevaluate things. But yeah, like no point of just saving money forever and never having any fun now, because hopefully you're healthy for a long time, but you never know what could happen with your health there. So definitely it's a good idea to enjoy your life now and not take your good health for granted. That's for sure. So yeah, thanks for sharing your latest articles there, and be sure to check out LA's great Toronto Star column every week there too. So great. So switching gears here for a moment. So I understand that you're looking at upsizing your family home there with your growing family. Maybe you could let us know what's going on with that, your thought process, and some good things for people to know if they're considering upsizing their houses as well, and how they would know it's time to do that.
It's a great theme, and I'll walk our listeners through some of the thought process and also say out loud that a lot of people over the past few years actually nixed their plans to increase their home, to do an upsize. And it had so much to do with high interest rates and the fact that a lot of people are already feeling the squeeze if they were a previous homeowner and maybe not feeling super confident going into a second property or a bigger property. But the reality is, depending on the configuration of your family and what your needs are, sometimes people are doing this upsize. And, I'll also say this out loud: upsizing doesn't need to be wildly expensive. It can look different ways. And I think, Sean, you're seeing it in your own community, but I think you're seeing a lot of creativity when it comes to even like intergenerational living, where people are doing their upsize. Some people are like leaving major centers to go to more affordable places to live, and they're getting, 1.5 times the size of home. You're also seeing, I think, as rates are softening here and as people are resuming some savings habits, you are seeing some individuals, couples, families not be as fearful about doing an upsize because as they're earning a little bit more, as the rates are softening, they're able to afford more and they're looking at their budget and they're really thinking hard about like, would it look like if we did do this move? So, for myself and my husband and my two really small kids, we're taking our time and we're really, honestly, I got to tell you, I could be convinced either way to go to do the upsize or to just renovate the space that we're in to make it more functional for our family. And the reason I say I'm open to it is I think you know this, but I'm married to a financial planner. We're both very, very practical financial people. And a lot of this is math. And it is, would give us like the best quality of life. And those are kind of the driving factors for us is like, would a renovation improve our quality of life? Or would a new house improve our quality of life? And to what degree would that happen? And that is so key. And I think it's something a lot of people would benefit from in their consideration. I think a lot of people are stepping back and saying, is this even the right thing to do right now? Should I just wait? And I am often coaching and counseling my community and my clients right now to take their time and really think about like if you're going to do a next stage move, like, what do you get out of this? How much improvement in your life do you get out of this? Do your finances improve? Does your access to work improve? I don't think enough airtime is ever spent on the fact that we are back to the office in a lot of cases. Like, does a lot of people are driving, they're taking transit, they're not working as remotely as we all were just a few years ago. And access to schools, closeness to family, access to childcare, like all of these pieces are really, really important. And then comes the math, right? A lot of, I think we've talked about this before, Sean, but like the housing market is not for the faint of heart. It requires considerable thought and investment but it is accessible for those who choose to prioritize that as their goal and if they have the flexibility and capacity to save and qualify for a mortgage, it is still accessible and available to them over time. Generally, this does not happen overnight where a couple or a single or a family would like go from a very small home to 1.5 or 2 times the size. That takes time and it takes preparation. And frankly, I think for a lot of people, we talked about the soft saving trend just a minute ago, but like these people are not doing that trend. They are going all in on their savings regime so that they can do the next stage home. And I speak from firsthand experience as my husband and I are really seriously considering like maybe we do move, we are looking in communities where it's less expensive than where we are. We are saving more than I think we've ever prioritized saving, and we're making choices to not do other things in order to save even more because that saving is important. It is what it will take to buy that home. Like I said, like home ownership is a combo of healthy savings habits that take time. It's a combo of being able to earn well consistently and qualify for a mortgage. Thankfully, the rates are softening. So it means that people are able to maybe qualify for something they weren't like even a year ago. And it gets into this other trend I'll mention. I am seeing a lot of people actually pivot their careers and pivot how much they're earning. Like they're choosing jobs that are going to earn the most money possible, not necessarily give them the biggest smile, but they're doing it because their goal might be that next stage home or even their very first home. And honestly, I think it's okay. I think that's totally fine. I think there's a time and a place for that. The other trend I'm seeing when it comes to like first-time home buyers and also those who are thinking of doing the upgrade is they're looking at other methods of buying. So some are actually like co-owning or jointly buying with other family members. They're doing the intergenerational living thing. They're, buying places with suites in the basement or suites in the attic. They're also looking at like even roommates and things that maybe they weren't considering beforehand. Airbnbs, depending on where you live, might not be allowed. But some of these creative configurations of owning are they're really interesting. And there's one other trend that I wrote about recently in the Star, and it's the trend of rent vesting. This is super popular right now. We could talk for an entire episode about this, but I'll give you the Coles notes on it. This rent vesting trend is where, people who are maybe living in a major center that can't afford a home in a major center just because the pricing's too high, they're using their down payment dollars and they're purchasing something less expensive in a less expensive area, a different part of their province, or there's even, like, gosh, I've seen some people do the rent vesting in a different country, but they're renting out what they're buying, covering the costs there, still earning equity whilst remaining in their major center. Possibly they're tied to their job and have to stay. And I think that's an interesting trend. You're seeing a lot more of that. You're also seeing it kind of go a little bit the other way where people are living in less expensive areas. And I'll just give an example, like maybe they're living in Saskatoon and they are owning there, but they need or want to move to Toronto, as an example. Well, the housing market is twice as much, if not 2.5 times in Toronto than it is in Saskatoon. And so what people are doing there is they're renting out their home in Saskatoon, moving to Toronto and renting in Toronto. And that is another version of the rent vesting phenomenon. So you're seeing a lot of that. And you're also seeing a lot of people who are doing home upgrades, and myself included, like as I'm looking at home, moving to the next stage home, like, is there an income earning opportunity with this next stage home? Is that the right thing for myself and my family? So lots of creative approaches to home ownership these days. And I really like it. I think people are getting very creative. I think they're learning a lot. I think they're easing their financial load by being creative. And that's a good thing going into the home ownership experience.
Well, thanks so much for sharing all those interesting trends, LA, with the listeners there. And yes, be sure to, if you enjoyed our conversation today, then be sure to read Lesley-Anne's weekly column in the Toronto Star, because yes, these are very interesting topics out there. And Lesley-Anne's at the cutting edge of this stuff, and her columns are very interesting. So yeah, thanks for sharing all this with the listeners here, and very interesting what's going on right now. So yeah, definitely think about some things before you go ahead and plan ahead and all that. But if you're looking for some encouragement and to see what else other people are doing it to make it in this world where cost of living is challenging, then be sure to check out LA's weekly column in the Toronto Star there. So yeah, thanks so much for joining the podcast today. And it was a pleasure to have you back on the show.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Burn Your Mortgage podcast. Besides being a podcast host, I'm also an independent mortgage broker. If you or anyone you know, family, friends, coworkers, or neighbors could ever use any unbiased mortgage advice or a second opinion, feel free to reach out. Email me at Sean, that's SEAN at burnyourmortgage.ca, or call or text me at 647-867-3711 for a free mortgage consultation. Also, be sure to head on over to www.burnyourmortgage.ca burnyourmortgage.ca and sign up for my free weekly newsletter. As a small token of my appreciation, you'll be able to download my ultimate mortgage checklist on choosing the perfect mortgage. I look forward to hearing from you and helping you with all your mortgage needs. Once again, thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Burn Your Mortgage podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and leave a rating. Until next time, happy mortgage burning.